Like a lot of you, I didn't like Battlefield 2042's operators. I felt like it completely ruined the idea of classes. Even when they started patching it and changing it to sort of fit the operators into different classes, it still didn't feel right. I never really paid attention to what classes were on my squad. It felt like everyone was just running around as an individual. I've been playing Battlefield since way back in Battlefield Vietnam. Bad Company 2 was my favourite, and back then you'd be so happy if on your team there was one member of each class, because it'd feel like you could get so much done. So I was super disappointed when I heard in Battlefield 6 that yes, there is a class system, but they're going to make it so every class can just use every weapon. I felt like that was eroding the identity of classes. You know, the idea that recons would have sniper rifles and supports would have LMGs and assaults would be the ones with assault rifles, and you'd all have to kind of work together with a recon up in a hill somewhere giving you overwatch while assault was properly pushing in and maybe support was holding a position. I liked the idea of everyone having their own role, and it seemed to me before I played Battlefield 6 that it couldn't possibly work with everyone just having access to every weapon. You know, otherwise you'd end up with just everyone using a sniper rifle sat on a hill somewhere because, you know, Battlefield people love to snipe. Or just every class using whatever the meta gun is and everyone seeming like they were the exact same. It was pretty cool when they announced that for the beta, originally they said just for the beta, you'd be able to choose locked or unlocked playlists, so they would offer playlists with weapons locked to specific classes so people could try it out if they wanted, and now they've actually said in the full game that's going to be an option too, and I guess they'll monitor it. Like if everybody wants to play the locked system, then they'll go with that for the future, and if everyone wants to play the unlocked system, they'll go with that. It does feel a bit weird that they're splitting the player base like this across playlists, but they've obviously got the confidence from, you know, the initial reveals that there's going to be enough people to populate both. Like probably a lot of you, I was fully expecting to just play the locked weapon playlist, and I thought everyone else would probably just end up doing the same thing, so eventually they'd give up on the unlocked playlists and that wouldn't be a thing. But at the Battlefield 6 multiplayer reveal event, which EA were kind enough to invite me to, we didn't have this option. We couldn't choose between locked or unlocked, so we were forced to play the unlocked version of the game, where every class had access to every weapon. And in practice, unlock actually works completely fine. And I think it might be my preference over locked now. So let me explain why. The roles in Battlefield 6 are really focused on the gadgets and the way they change what you're able to do, what problems you're able to solve for your squad or for your team. So Assault have a grenade launcher which can bust open walls or clear out enemies who are behind cover, and in the full game we've seen from the trailer they'll be able to have ladders which will help their team to breach different floors or reach rooftops. Like their role is really about being able to push onto an objective, clear out enemies who are sort of embedded within that objective, and then take it over. Engineers have all the tools to deal with vehicles, whether that's destroying them or repairing them. So they've got like ground-to-ground rocket launchers, they've got ground-to-air rocket launchers, they've got the repair tools so they can fix stuff, and they have a flak jacket so they can survive some explosive barrages. I think the flak jacket gives you like 33% explosive resistance, which probably isn't enough to survive a direct hit, but if the enemy's using a lot of grenade launchers, maybe it will help a bit. Then supports are the only class that are able to replenish ammo, and when I was playing that ended up actually being a big deal. Like people were running out of ammo all the time, but supports can replenish people's ammo, and they can put health down, and they can do much faster revives, either the normal one where you drag people, or they can do a nearly instant one if they get their defibrillators out and then charge them. And they can also put down deployable cover, which is pretty good. Like they can deploy a little wall that you can hide behind or mount on, stuff like that. Then Recon can use the C4, which is obviously super useful in buildings because you can kind of set little traps or you can make new paths through buildings. And they have an array of tools like drones, a motion sensor, and even access to a UAV to help them mark enemies on the map for the team. They can also do the sort of spawn point placing that they've been able to do before. All of these classes have a use in most situations. I would say right now, I don't think the engineer feels great. They're probably the odd ones out, because on the infantry focused maps, engineers don't really have a lot to do. There's no point in being an engineer. Maybe in the future they could get some kind of like trophy system, or maybe they could be given that deployable cover that the support class has. That could be pretty cool. Or they could have some kind of advanced smoke grenade system or something like that. I don't know. I think they need something for the infantry focused maps. And you know, being engineers, it would make sense for them to be the ones with the equipment. Maybe give them the ladders instead of assault or something like that. But the important thing is that you still want players from each class on your team. If there's vehicles about, you need engineers. You always need support to keep your team going. Like I said, ammo was probably the biggest issue that desperately needed supports, because as a squad you can still revive each other, even if you take a bit longer if you're not playing the support class. Recons were a huge help when you had them, because they could give you an idea of where enemies were and give you the spawn points, and assaults were still probably the best at getting kills. And once they do get the ladders, if they're in the beta or I guess in the full game, they'll be even more useful. The weapons didn't really come into it at all. At no point was I like, oh thank God someone on our team has an LMG. Of course, each class has a bonus for using their signature weapon. It's like a little passive perk. Some of them aren't that useful, like the support class. I think their sprint speed is unaffected when they're carrying an LMG. Some of them are pretty good, like the recon have a faster rechambering speed of sniper rifles, and they can hold their breath to steady a shot. That is super good if you're using a sniper rifle. Assaults get faster ADS and sprint recovery with an assault rifle, which is kind of something you can do with attachments. But as an assault, you get that before you've even put any attachments on, so you get a sort of greater effect of it. And engineers get better hip fire accuracy with SMGs. All of those perks are nice to have, but they're not complete game changers. Instead, weapons feel more like you'll choose them based on the map and the specific objective that you're trying to complete. So maybe if you're defending a point that's out in the open on the valley map, you'd want things like sniper rifles and LMGs to make it more difficult for infantry to get close to you. But if you're breaching into a building or an objective, especially if it's on like the New York map where you're going through into lots of smaller rooms, you're probably going to want an SMG or a shotgun, so you can end up like, you know, maneuvering around very, very quickly and maybe doing a bit of hip firing, react very fast. And then sometimes you want an assault rifle, like on that New York map. If you're firing from the windows down onto the street below, that's kind of the perfect range for assault rifles. My point is that whatever weapon works best in a certain situation is probably best for everybody, regardless of what class you're playing. So while the recon is super handy to have on your team in the New York map, you know, they might flank around, then set up a spawn point so you can attack an objective from the other side, or put down motion sensors in squad deathmatch. If they had to have a sniper rifle, having a recon would actually be a hindrance. So what will happen is you just won't get recons in that mode. Why would anyone bother playing as them? Or engineers, you know, they're super useful, they're super important if you've got tanks approaching a base, but then once the tanks are dealt with, if they're stuck with an SMG on the bigger open maps like the Valley map, they're actually going to be kind of pointless. You know, they're not going to be able to fight anyone at any kind of real range. So it's quite nice with unlocked classes that as a team, you can still get the utility of a range of different classes all working together, but you don't have that trade-off of half the team being stuck with completely the wrong weapon for the situation. And, you know, in Battlefield they have also got rid of things like that cross menu where you're constantly changing attachments and stuff like that, so you can still pick weapons and pick attachments that suit a specific role, and there are still trade-offs inherent in that. You know, you build an assault rifle for range, it's not going to be as good as someone who has one for up close, so you might on your squad want people who have both of those and stuff like that. But it's nice being able to have people from every class without just having someone who's essentially useless on a certain objective because they've got a sniper rifle. Now, I know there are other ways DICE could have done this. Like, I think the idea behind the locked class setup is that every class gets their signature weapons, so like assault rifles for assault, but then they'll also get access to weapons like DMRs and shotguns. So there will be some classes of weapons that everyone can choose from to give them at least some option to fight at range or to fight up close. And I'm sure that could definitely work too. But I'm just surprised that I don't hate what they've done with Battlefield 6. You get free choice of weapon to pick what's best for the situation, and you get some small added bonuses if you pick one that fits with your kind of class identity. But the real distinction between classes, the real thought process behind choosing what class you want to be, is all about the gadgets. It's all about what problems can you solve. I think the reason a lot of Battlefield fans have been upset about this is that they were used to the kind of maps that were in older Battlefield games, where especially, you know, once there were a million maps for each game and the community decided which maps they'd be playing the most, people tended to pick the maps that kind of had a range of different things. So you'd have some vehicle combat, and then you'd have some buildings where there's kind of close quarters combat. And so if you wanted to snipe, there was a place on the map for that. And if you wanted to be sort of doing close quarters fighting, there was a place for that. In Battlefield 6, some of the modes and the maps that were shown off in the reveal event and will be in the beta, because it's the same maps, particularly Squad Deathmatch, which I made a video about the other day, is actually my favourite mode that I got to play so far. Modes like that wouldn't really work very well with anything except for assault rifles and SMGs and shotguns. So with a locked class setup, you probably wouldn't see people picking up anything other than assault. It would make the games quite stale because everyone would just be playing as the same class. You wouldn't get that many support players. You wouldn't get that many players playing as recon. And I mean, you still might not get anyone playing as engineer unless they change it. But at least, you know, 3 is better than just 1. And through all of this, it is important to note that it's basically impossible for us as players or as fans to know what the balance of the finished game will be like. Because in the build that creators got to play at the reveal event and you'll get to play in the beta, so many gadgets weren't available. I'm sure the beta might add more over time, like maybe in the second weekend they'll add some more stuff to it, but it still won't be the full array. So something that seems super overpowered now might actually have a clear counter in the full game, or something that's underpowered right now might actually be a really good counter to something that we just haven't seen yet, or it might be really useful in a map that we haven't seen yet. I don't really think the reveal event or this beta was about working out balance or working out metas or, you know, giving people a chance to give feedback on what they think is too strong or too weak. I think it's more about making sure the core game works on, you know, different people's setups, different systems, different numbers of players across the world, and trying to make sure that the core game is fun, that people enjoy what Battlefield is. So when you play the beta, make sure you have fun. Let me know in the comments what you think about the locked and unlocked class options, and I'd be interested to hear, what are people planning on playing in the beta? Assuming you get the choice from the beginning, do you want to play locked or do you want to play unlocked? Which one are you going to pick? I'd be interested to see what people say. The beta goes live on Thursday morning. I'll be streaming it right here, so make sure you subscribe, turn your notifications on, and I'll see you then. Goodbye.